In this presentation, we'll go through the practice of printing and plotting. Hopefully by now you should know that printing and plotting is basically the same exact thing, except for it really depends on which output device that you send your file to. If you send it to a printer, you're printing. If you send it to a plotter, you're plotting. Pretty much as simple as that. So printing and plotting are virtually the same thing. As you can see on the screen, I have the slot plate drawing. Hopefully your file that you've created in a previous chapter looks something like this. And I want to print this to an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper. When creating the slot plate, this drawing was drawn 1-to-1 and there'd be no scaling necessary. I'm going to go to the plot button, which is the fourth icon on the standard toolbar, and you should get this dialog box to appear. Page setup we don't have to worry about at this point, that'll come later. Your main thing now would be to select the printer plotter. So that's in this area. When looking at selecting the printer plotter, the one thing that you have to do is identify which printer plotter do you want to go to. Now, if you have a home device, you probably have it loaded and you want to find that device. I'm going to scroll up and I'll find one called Horton 114. That's a laser printer that we have in the outside office. Now the next thing that I need to do is decide, do I want to plot this to the actual printer plotter or plot it to a file? By plotting it to a file, you can take it to another computer, upload it, and then print from there. Most of the time you'll be plotting directly to the output device, in this case a printer. My paper size, I said, was going to be letter size, or 8.5 by 11. That is the same as letter size, so I will leave that. Otherwise, I would click the down arrow and select a different item here under paper size. Plot area. Now, the plot area has probably the most variables here. What to plot? Do you want to plot display? Probably not. I never plot display. You always would want to plot something like either extents, limits, or windows. Now you might also have view show up if you have any views in the drawing. That would be another option. Extents will print out the extent of the drawing, which includes all entities. It'll try to print that onto the sheet of paper if it's possible. Limits is going to plot whatever's within inside the limits. You can always tell the limits by turning the grid on, and that defines the limits. And window would allow you to print a specific area that you select by putting a window around whatever area of the drawing that you want to print. At this point, I'm going to print limits. I'll leave my plot offset at 0, 0 for the X and the Y. Otherwise, I also have an opportunity over here to center the plot, which I'll show you later. Fit to paper. This is nice if you just want to do a check plot to see what's the drawing going to look like, but it's not going to be to scale. So in my case, I want to check that off, and I want to plot that at a scale of 1-to-1, so I can change this 1 to 1 there. So it's going to print out 1 inch equals 1 unit. So it's a 1-to-1 scale or full scale. I'm also going to click this arrow over here in the corner, which gives me more options. I'm going to drag that over so you can see that on the screen. But in here, the only thing you really have to set is up at the top where it says Plot Style Table. If I click the down arrow, I want to scroll down to where I can find Monochrome CTB. That's what you typically always want to plot. It's going to pop up with a question: assign this plot style table to all layouts? Yes. Now I'm ready to plot. Before plotting, always do a preview. So I want to see what is it that it's going to plot. I do a drawing preview, and in here you can see that it has my drawing. It is to scale. It's not quite centered. So I can right-click, exit, and I can push the Center Plot button. Now again, this is going to center the limits, not necessarily the drawing. So I'll preview again, and now this brings up, and it shows it a little bit more centered. To center something, when you have an item like this here, to center it exactly, it's probably better to use extents. So I'm going to right-click Exit, and I'm going to print extents. Now, it should be perfectly centered. I go to Preview, and yes, it is perfectly centered. I go Exit. Now, Apply to Layout. If everything looks correct, I'm going to say Apply to Layout. What that does is it saves it in the memory of the drawing, so next time I come to print this item, everything's already set up. I don't have to reset everything. So it's very important that if it previews correctly, apply it to layout, then hit OK. You've probably seen a button on the screen pop up that told me that the drawing printed. OK. And I just clicked to turn it off. Next, I want to show you how to plot different type drawings, architectural drawings, rather than just the slot plate. The process is basically the same. I have a drawing already running in the background. Fastest way to jump to a drawing that's running in the background, I feel, is go up to Window, and it'll list them here. So I'm going to select the section Final, and here is a drawing that's been created to show the typical cross-section of a house. And what I want to do is just show you some different print or plot options. Go up to Plot, And again, it says the 4MV is not available, so I basically have printer and plotter here. I need to select one. I'm going to pick one that I use in my central office here. And now that it's changed that, I had an error message saying the paper wasn't the right size, but now it's set itself. So it has a lot of automatic features for you also. So I'm printing to a printer in Horton Hall. So this is my printer name. You would want to find your printer name that you're using locally. Paper size letter. Let's plot extents this time. I'll center the plot. I'll fit it to paper. And for the plot style, again, is monochrome CTV. Then it asks you to assign this plot style table to all layouts. Say yes. And I'm going to preview it. And now I have that drawing forced to fit on 8.5 by 11 paper. Now if I plotted it to scale, it can't possibly plot it at 1/2 inch equals a foot to that size paper. And just to show you, let's turn fit the paper off and then go to scale, and let's say 1/2 inch equals a foot. That was the scale that it was intended to be plotted at. If I preview that, notice that I'm centering the plot. I'm just getting a very small portion of it. And maybe I try to go to 1/4 inch equals a foot. Maybe now it'll fit. Fits a lot better, but it's still not fitting perfectly. Again, most of the time you're probably going to plot just fit to paper for your own purposes, but when you send it to us or you send it to our plotters, we'll be plotting it to a specific scale that it's meant to be plotted at, whether it's 1/4 inch equals a foot or 1/2 inch equals a foot or so forth. And again, that's plotting extents. I'm going to preview it. If that's what I want, I would apply that to layout and I'd hit OK. So you've seen it processing. Now it says plot and publish job complete. I'm going to click that off. No errors or warnings were found. So usually I just click that off, and that tells me that the print came out to the printer and it was sent OK. The other thing that I want to go through is, what if I go to plot, and I don't want to plot extents, but maybe I want to plot window. Okay. Now it allows me to put a window. Maybe I want to plot just the foundation. Go to window, maybe I want to plot just a window around the foundation. I can preview that, and now that's all I'm going to get to print out. And again, that's fit to scale, but now that I'm doing just a portion of it, maybe now I want to go and try to plot it out at a specific scale, like 1/2 inch equals a foot. Preview that. Again, now it will print out exactly 1/2 inch equals a foot, so it's going to be to scale, and it'll only give me that part of the drawing. And so you can put a window around any area that you'd like. Another feature would be view. View will not show up as an option if there's no views in the drawing. In this drawing I have one view, and it would list all the views here in this drop-down box, but in this case I only have one, and I have it called soffit area, so I select that, and let's preview that at 1/2 inch equals a foot. Preview, and that's what I would get on my drawing at 1/2 inch equals a foot. Again, use my mouse to zoom in and zoom out to see what that view would look like, or take a closer look at any of the entities that are drawn in that view. And then hit escape to bring you back to the dialog box. And okay, so now I plot that view. Again, I get another little warning here, or not warning, but just message telling me that there was no errors or warnings found, and the job printed okay. I click that off, and that kind of gives you some ideas of different ways of printing, even larger drawings. This drawing was designed to plot on 22 by 17 paper, okay, or C-size paper. And when you're plotting it, I've been plotting at just letter size, 8.5 by 11, so if I did the entire drawing, I'd have to scale it to fit the paper, so I did that. And then if I was taking small portions of it, whether I used window or view, then I was scaling it to the exact scale of the drawing, which was 1/2 inch equals a foot. And it was coming out and it would fit on 8.5 by 11 paper. That's good to know, especially if you need to fax that information to an individual that may need to know just a small portion of the drawing. They don't need to see the entire drawing. So you can always just take bits and pieces of it and chop it out. Again, you probably all have printers that print 8.5 by 11 or letter size paper, so most of the time when you do a print of your entire drawing, you will have to scale it to fit. So unless you want to zoom up to a specific area and do either a window or a view, you'll probably not be plotting the scale on your end. But when you send it to plotters here, or you send it to us to plot, we'll be plotting on larger paper on large plotters, and therefore would want it to print to scale versus scale to fit. So if you have any questions on printing on your end, or having any difficulty, make sure to contact me, and I'll do the best I can to help figure things out on that end. Otherwise, this wraps up the presentation for printing and plotting.